Hey everybody, Mark here. Thanks so much for tuning in. And we have a really fun episode today with Jevon Washington, our guest speaker from this past weekend. We get to hear a little bit more about his message. He and Phil share some stories about when they used to do ministry together. And Phil even shares his rapper name. Yep, you heard that correctly. As well as dive in and orbit around the question of does God exist? So really fun episode. But before we get started there, I want to remind you that we have our spiritual formation retreat coming up in a couple weekends. So if you want to get away into the redwoods, go spend time with God in prayer with other people from our community, we'd love for you to join us to do that. As well as you might have noticed or seen Menlo Moments, which is a special episode of the Menlo Midweek podcast. This is something that we're going to be releasing where we're just sharing stories of people in Menlo's community with really impactful stories to tell. So it could be personal stories about how they got to Menlo, things that have gone on in their lives. But these have been some of the most fun conversations I've had, some of the most intense conversations I've had. So be on the lookout for those. Those will release both on wherever you can get podcasts as well as on YouTube. So without any more of my talking, let's go ahead and jump into today's conversation. Hey, everybody. My name is Mark.
And I'm Jessica.
And we have two people with us today.
Woo!
Whoa. Phil.
What's
of
up,
course,
everybody? Good to see you.
And our guest speaker from this past weekend,
the man, the myth, the
Jevon
legend.
Washington.
Whoa.
What up?
He's here.
What a fun midweek this is. I'm so excited.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. Jevon, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, you introduced yourself, said you were from Seattle, and Phil introduced you as a rapper turned
Prove
preacher.
it.
So
Prove
now's your time to shine. We're so excited.
Man.
Oh, okay. We got a beat going.
Yeah. Sight. Not going to happen.
All right, well,
Yeah.
I tried, guys. I tried.
Yeah.
It
So-
felt 50-50, to be honest.
I thought it might happen, actually.
I almost did it, but I heard enough bass. But chocolate people need bass. So like I grew up, in Seattle, all over up and down the I-5 corridor. But yeah, I started doing rap music. Kind of, found that, and
that was a real thing.
It was a real thing,
Not
man.
lying. It was true.
You're not lying.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
think
why
the
I said.
first
I didn't
time-
doubt it, but
I feel
was
like the
just
first time we
yeah.
ever really did ministry together, you came in and did rap for me.
That is actually true.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
And you're still
Not
friends,
like
so
for
it
me
must have been
personally,
good.
but like,
Was it in
It
his
was-
interview?
he
or
was
in your
rapping
interview?
at you.
Yeah.
you want to grab coffee? Well, here's the thing. At it, I just
I
need
wanna
you to
rap
Just
first.
at this Starbucks, just right at. No, it's
Yeah.
in student ministry world.
Yep. Student ministry, because a lot of young people.
Yeah.
So I started doing rap, started doing music production.
Okay.
The first song I ever produced, a lot of people don't know this. You will know it now, because you probably never heard of me. So that's why a lot of people don't
Yeah,
know
that's
about
true.
this. But a guy by the name of Derek Minor, who a lot of people do know, owns a record label, RMG, with another guy named Doc Watson. He actually did the post-production on my first rap production that I had ever did. And now his stuff is just everywhere. And then the second one that I did was for a record label that no longer exists. It's called Cross Movement. I did a record for them, producing it. So I used to just love music producing and doing rap music. But I at one point was like, I just don't know if I want to keep doing this. But I've got to share the stage with people like Dustin Kinsrew,
yeah.
people like Citizens and Saints, King's Kaleidoscope. Shout out to you, Chad. Call me.
Call me too, dude. You're like my biggest hero.
So I got a chance to do rap music with some people like that. So it's been cool, but I just felt like I just didn't want to rap anymore. Yeah.
Wow.
That's also why I stopped rapping.
Okay. Yeah.
When the duo broke up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a boy band. You guys get it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The first rap boy
What
band.
what was your rap name?
P Drizzle.
P
I think.
Drizzle.
Oh
That
my
was it.
gosh.
That was it.
Oh, that's a highlight for sure.
Friends don't let friends pick rap names.
Sure. Dude, I didn't pick it. The
point.
streets did,
The streets,
Oh
Streets
my
of- yeah.
gosh.
the streets of where?
That's the streets of Bellevue, I think.
Oh, God. I was like, the streets of Candyland? That was P Drizzle.
The streets of Candyland. I'm going to use that.
The mean streets.
That's right. Just gotta
And how
watch
did
out.
you two meet?
Oh man, you
We
wanna-
just said it. We just keep streets of Candyland.
streets of Candyland.
Yeah, so Jevon and I have a mutual friend named Brandon. Brandon and I linked up, and I feel like both Brandon and my relationship and you're in my relationship sort of started by doing some student ministry stuff together. But really, I feel like where we became friends was in both cases trying to help these young men pursue women who I don't know their level of interest in them, but now they're both married to them.
Oh my gosh.
And so I tried to just be, Dr. Love a little bit to help them out and be a
the
sounding
heck?
board. I know.
I'm out here
I know,
trying
I know. Yeah, that's fair. It's totally fair. I received that. But yeah, then, I think Jevon and I are just kind of cut from the same cloth in terms of ministry philosophy. And, obviously Jevon is a tremendously gifted communicator. And so I've enjoyed being able to kind of bounce ideas off of him. I think we are very active in the kind of Marco Polo world. So we've stayed active, even just checking in with each other once we didn't live anywhere near each other. And he would come speak for me from time to time in Colorado. And especially this conversation, I knew the kind of voice that I wanted to bring to this part of the series, and Jevon was gracious enough to bring it. So, but yeah, but I think if you were here, you listened to it, or you caught up, it's just, I think Jevon is a super unique combination of gifts. Like, he's strategic, he's thoughtful, he's a great leader, he understands kind of systems and volunteer culture, but he's also like knockdown communicator. He's got some of that like kind of poetry in it, but he's thoughtful, really, really thoughtful. And so, yeah, that's just it's a combination I envy, and because I can't copy it, I'll just have him come bring it sometime. So,
I will trade you.
Perfect.
That's so funny. Yeah, man, I love Phil, man, and we talk at least once a week, whether it's by phone, FaceTime, or Marco Polo. And it's one of those things. I even do think that in today's date is lost a little bit about just friendship. And then even though seasons of life change, we always know that sometimes relationships change and how they feel, and you just have to figure out how to kind of adapt with them. And so Phil's really been a dude who I've just respected a ton. His just wisdom and encouragement is like none other. He is taller and lighter skinned than Yoda, and he's
true.
It's true. He's been a blessing. So meeting him, getting a chance to do that, and he was helpful and instrumental in helping me figure out how to pursue my wife of now 12 years. We celebrated this month.
Awesome. Congrats.
Yes. So thankful.
And you mentioned you had kids as well?
Yeah, I got 2 kids.
Okay.
Ryan and Sophia. Hey, Ryan and Sophia. Daddy loves you. Yeah, they are 5 and 7, and they're whirlwinds and crazy beautiful, and love them. They're amazing. It's so good to be able to be a parent. It's very tiring.
Yeah.
But and sometimes personal space is not a word or a phrase, but it's been such a blessing. And then my wife, Heather, she lives. She previously had lived in the Philippines and
Cool.
places like California and Vancouver with her family, and now majority of our family lives now in Seattle, and then extended family all over the place. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you guys go back quite a bit. I want to know, Phil, what's something that we should know about Jevon that we don't know about him right now?
Oh man.
Hey, you get to go after, so you can start thinking of your answer for Phil.
Well, I feel like if you didn't already know this, I was going to tell you that he was a retired rapper, because people think I'm joking, but I'm not. Like, and he throws shade on himself, but you were good, dude. You were good.
Oh, thanks, man.
I think probably a little bit more serious, but Jevon was like really involved on the team at Mars Hill, kind of like right up into the time when, like, if you listen to that podcast, Jevon has like he was in it, and so I was on staff at a church 5 minutes away from their broadcast location in the same town, and so praying for Jevon and kind of just hearing updates about how he was walking through all that stuff, and the Lord was really gracious to help him be able to leave well, and pretty divine timing. But I think that he brings I think a lot of different church experience to the table, but candidly, like most people, when they go through an experience like that, they leave it pretty jaded, pretty cynical of faith and church, and I think Jevon had really wise eyes to be able to see what was happening and what wasn't happening, and to be able to read a situation with nuance that if you weren't in Seattle, that whole situation has no nuance because we don't do nuance well, and so we just paint it with broad brushes. But for Jevon, that wasn't a podcast; that was part of his life, and so watching how you walk through that, man, was really impressive.
Wow. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I got
Appreciate
you.
Jevon, what should we know about Phil that we don't know about Phil?
Man, besides his love of Lululemon pants,
Let's go.
I just found that out last night. And apparently I'm going.
Yeah, I'm gonna take him there. He's been making fun of him. Like, let's try him on, bro. You might not feel that way.
Today's
Okay.
the
Okay.
day.
They're doing a Lululemon Peloton collab.
Heck yeah, they are. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, I think
Game
that-
respects game.
real recognize real.
Yeah.
Man, honestly, I think one of the biggest things about Phil is that his temperament and wisdom is like it's off the charts to me. I've honestly never seen anything like it before. And there's not like there's a certain person that in order for you to be able to even give them like pieces of yourself, of like trust, and of even just vulnerability, like the wisdom and the heart of Phil like commands that, not in a way of like give it to me, is really in the way of like, man, how could you not want to walk with and be in relationship with someone like that? And the wisdom is just off the charts. The attention to detail, the boldness to ask the hard questions, the faith to believe that the mountain can be moved, and just the reality of saying what can we do and what's the hard work that we're going to have to do. And one of the sayings that Phil has said, which has been super helpful for me in navigating my pastoral ministry, and then also now my wife in the restaurant industry, is that clarity is kindness. And so as much as you can provide clarity, like just these different things, it's just very kind to people. And so all these different things I've learned from Phil have just been super intentional. He is the like in the if he's just like a really good scalpel that is able to remove like the things that are harmful or persons in danger of, just with his wisdom. So I'm just baffled by his wisdom and ability to look at these different things and just call it out, build a plan, and start working on it. And then by the end of it, it's like, yo, this is dope. This is like a beautiful masterpiece. So
Wow.
Yeah, he's the real deal for real.
Yeah. We're lucky to have him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd say
you bet, man.
we've experienced a lot of that in just the 10 months he's been here.
Has it only been 10 months?
I was just doing the math in my head. Yep, October, right?
God help
You
us
started
out.
in
10
January.
months. Yeah, it feels like more than 10 months.
Well, then you guys are in for blessings.
Well, and I think, like wisdom comes from life, comes from pain, and I think one of the gifts at Menlo that's like in this season has been that we've experienced life together and we've experienced pain together. And there was some pent up stuff that were hard things that had to get done, and that idea of clarity is kindness, like that's not a slogan for me. That's part of my life, and so I think had a chance to walk through hard things, but hopefully hard things well. Not perfectly. I haven't mastered that part yet, but and then I think adding some personal pain onto that. You're always worried, like when you don't know somebody, hey, is this who they really are? And I think I tell people all the time, like, you should be nervous if you know people who don't have friends that they've been friends with for 15, 20, 25 years. Like that just tells you something about what happens when they hit pain in their life.
Yeah.
And so I'm just, I'm thankful for people like Jevon in my life where, we've gone the distance as friends, and I'm sure there's times when Jevon's been annoyed with me, and like our relationship gets to the other side of it and we are stronger because of it. And so I'm hopeful for that at Menlo, and I hope that the scale of all the things that we've had to do in year one is not the scale of all the things we have to do in year two, that we're able to make incremental progress that's sustainable. But 10 months in, here we are. Yeah, definitely feels like some complicated by personal loss, but it's like a dog year for sure.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I've seen just since I've been here, just visiting, has been really cool to see the energy of people like you guys and the staff, and it feels like such a cool blessing to see just like how the navigation and just the gifts of all the people and all the things that are new or things that you guys are experiencing or doing is really cool to even just see. I see Phil with like some young bucks and some other seasoned saints as well, just being able to tackle anything and everything for the glory of Jesus and for the good of people. And I think it's just awesome.
Yeah. It's fun. It's really fun. And there's evidence of like you two trusting each other highly and speaking well of each other. And when I heard we were getting a guest speaker for a series that's already like skeptic facing, questioning facing people, and then for Phil to pass that off of is God real to someone else, I was like, he has to have someone special in mind for this one. Because that is not one, that's not an easy series. It's not an easy ask. And so,
Well, initially I wasn't available.
oh yeah,
that-
So
I was
then
told,
he had to go
we
number
both
two.
were tied
Yeah.
up. Yeah, nice.
What
Fair.
you need, I got you.
And I'm just, I'm really blessed by, and I think our community as well is blessed by your message this past weekend. And so if you can just summarize it a little bit for those that might have missed it, and then we got some questions for you and we can dive in from there.
Yeah, I really, it was just some of those questions around. I think it's a good question to ask, like, is there a God? I think that's a question that a lot of people ask themselves. Even if you call yourself a follower of Jesus, you if you don't hit times that you ask that question, you should ask that question. And I think those times are coming if you haven't had them before. And I think the reality is it makes it more and more real. And the question is a good question. And oftentimes, one of the ways to find the answer to questions is to ask, it's not to just answer it, but it's to ask more questions. And the reality is that I've had a lot of friends, and some of them, as I mentioned in the sermon, that they actually helped me prepare. So even when me and Phil, we got on our joint and we did the Instagram live, like I sent that to my friends who would like help me prepare for it, and they're like, yeah, let's see it, want to hear. So even when I'm preaching that, it's from a perspective of it's not just some ethereal thing in my head that wants to talk about just prove an answer because this is the space that I'm in, because I think it's a legitimate question. And I think once our questions are answered, that's when things can become real or to make sense for us. So to ask the question, is there a God, is very important. But I do think, as important as it is to humanity, I think it's more like popular like in the West. I think in other parts of the world, people aren't really asking that question. There's always been a big kind of background of religion and spirituality that I think for some reason in the West, especially like in Seattle, I would say Seattle's like, I don't know what we are. We're like all the above. Like we have spirituality, we have, we don't believe in God, and then we blame God for all the problems in the world. And that's some of the things that I kind of started to see more and more. So I'd say we looked at in the sermon, like, how can we prove God's existence? We looked at creation. We looked at conscience. We looked at the reality of evil and pain and suffering as things or lampposts that paint the way and show that there actually is a God versus there is no God.
Yeah.
So speaking of creation, little question for everybody to answer. What in creation makes you go, oh man, yeah, God's super real? I'll go first. For me, it's whales. I go whale watching, and they're just so big and majestic. And I'm like, God is so real and so good. These creatures are incredible. It's just mind blowing. The ocean in general too, but whales specifically are just so cool to me.
It's good.
I think for me, definitely high like mountain areas. Like if you get up into the Sierras and are just surrounded by just the smells of the trees that are up there, like they're unlike anything else. And then the sun feels different because you're at high elevation. You feel different because you're at high elevation. And I just feel like the Sierras was one of God's playgrounds where he's just like, I'm going to go off a little bit and like create waterfalls and streams.
Yeah.
And I can visit the same stretch of river or stream, year after year after year, and it will look and feel completely different, even though it's the same place. And how I feel in that, like, it will make me feel different. So
Yeah.
I'm like, obviously.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, I mentioned it in the sermon, but like I'd say two things. Number one is like our eyes. Our eyes. I didn't mention this in the sermon, but our eyes. Like, I love that one meme that's like, you know, someone would like robbed a bank, and then it's like the picture of it is like all blurry. But then it's like when you're trying to see your Ring camera, it's like you can't make out the Ring camera, but you can make out this other quality of this other picture, where it's like we're looking at stars and galaxies, distant galaxies. You can see all these things, but yet I can't see who's on my Ring camera. And then that just makes me think about the eyes and how there's certain things in space that you can see with your eyes that you need to spend like thousands of dollars or millions of dollars for your telescope to even see. And I'm just like, fam, that's nuts.
Yeah.
You know, and to think like cameras have, you know, like the shutter to open and close to capture the light, and then has a sensor to, you know, change the beautifulness of the image. It's like our eyes do that. Like, that's nuts. And then the other one is just perfect circles of planets.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that is, to me, is just crazy. And they're all moving, and like, I'm like, come on, fam. That's nuts. That just makes me absolutely marvel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a fine tuning aspect for sure for me at like a macro and micro level that we are brilliant. Like, human beings are brilliant and have continued to build and use tools for our intellect to understand more and more. And I think inside of a worldview where God is not present, sometimes there can be this idea that eventually everything will be known. But I think that there's some kind of pride and hubris that's really revealed in that, because at a distance that is not as far as it should be, we are making nothing but guesses as it relates to the universe. Like, we are making nothing but guesses.
Yeah.
And they're good guesses, but they're guesses. And that is, you know, if we're to think about it in terms of the types of distances that we're talking about, getting to Mars is like our interplanetary cul-de-sac, and that's like, wouldn't it be cool if we could get people there and live there? You know, like, and God spoke it into existence. Like, it wasn't even in the footnotes. It was just like, oh yeah, like, I guess I'm making Earth, I'll make Mars too. And then I think on the other side, the like micro fine tuning, that we have molecular biologists that are looking so granular, so detailed. But once you get too far in, the types of, like, we still don't know. The smartest mind in the world does not really understand how atoms work. There are binding agents that we are just making really good assumptions about, but they're assumptions. And I think there is a point that I think, when you talked about it this weekend, that, you know, when we think about Romans 1, that these things are written on our hearts, right? Like, I just think that there's something, if you look at this, you're either acknowledging, I'm fine with living with the guesses, I'm fine with it, or I think there is something, it's usually referred to as the unmoved mover. There's something bigger than all of this that didn't just put it in place, but according to Colossians, is holding it together. And I think if we don't know how atoms and molecules are held together, and then Jesus says, I hold everything together, I'm like, hey, spoiler alert, I think I know how they're held together, you know?
Preach.
So yeah, I think for me, those are always like, as cool as everything is, there's parts of this that nobody can explain. And I think that, yeah, for me, points to God.
That's a word in there.
Yeah.
The God who holds the world together when your life is falling apart. He holds it together. Amen.
Let's go. Let's go. Preach.
Yeah. So for us, we might think, man, how could we see this world exist in this world? And it obviously points to Creator. But you said that in preparation for this message, you asked some friends 4 questions. And were any of their answers, no, there's no Creator? And what were those conversations like? How did you balance, you know, teaching to groups of people that might be in the same room of, yes, obviously there's a Creator, and then, no, we're not on the same page at all?
Yeah. I think imperfectly. we'll just say that off the jump. You know, which is a beautiful dynamic. which just speaks to, I think, even what Phil just said, the complexity of us being able to even recognize those things and try to
Right.
pull those different things out. But then even to understand too, like what you're saying, some of the answers that I got, like some people said there is no God, but why did they say that?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's one of my mentors always said, Jevon, it's never about what it's about. So if the question
That's
is there a God, or does God
Wow.
exist? There's a reason why they say no, and there's a reason why they say yes, and then there's a reason why they say I don't know. So what's their reasoning behind? And I think the question. So if you didn't hear what the questions were, number one was, does God exist, or is there a God? Number two is why. What's your current belief system, and how did you come to it? 3, how does your current belief system address pain and suffering? And then number 4 is, would you be open to follow Jesus? Why or why not? And I think we got real when it came to number 2 and number 4. Number 2 was, what's your belief system, and then how do you, why did you choose it? And some people just choose it because they say, we don't believe there's a God, but I do believe in morals. I do believe in being a good person and doing a good job and being kind and leaving the world to be a better place. And I'm like, all those things are great. And I think in some of their minds was that that was the goal of life, which it's good. It's good to have all of those things, which it's part of how we were created to. So just even hearing that was like, oh, they're like, they're tapping into something that's real and true. And then when I got to, would you consider the words of Jesus and following Jesus? It was like, no, I don't believe in Jesus. It's more of like a fairy tale, kind of like a magical created story, or I need more proof. I need more proof. And so that's kind of the responses. And I wasn't shocked by anything. And, so you got those from, I don't think there's enough proof, from it's a story or a crutch, which I'm like, yeah, fam. But I'm like, if you break your ankle, you go to the doctor and they give you crutches. So for me, I really think that God, the existence of God, the reality of Jesus and God putting the world right, speaks to and even gives an answer to why is there suffering. So oftentimes the pain and suffering question is, why is this happening? Why? You may not always get the answer, but if you know the story about how the world became broken and the God who's on the mission to fix it, that at least gives you like, oh snap, okay, a locale to start from, rather than just floating in up into outer space where you don't know what's happening. So I think those are the places where really kind of like started to cement itself to help me even get the framework for my sermon of how and why people address those, and then trying to figure out how to take each one of those and craft them into the sermon.
Yeah. Wow. I'm glad that you went there from the does God exist to, well, an objection of that could be, but bad things happen. There's pain in this world. There's evil in this world. There's natural disasters, which you talked about later in your message as well. And I think that making that leap for people was hard. Easy for someone to say, but I have objections. Hard for you as a communicator to say, well, I see those and I'm going to try to take it there as well. So I really appreciate that you did that, because a lot of people could just argue the existence theoretically and not answer some of the more granular pushback questions.
Yeah. And I thought that also the other thing too is like, look, we're preaching this sermon, like these like there are people in there that are 150,000 times smarter than me that can talk about the granular pieces of science,
Sure.
right? That can explain it better than I can in a 30-minute sermon, across different generations and different topics along those lines. So you really kind of have to pick like what is going to be most valuable, and how do you deal with these, with just also too like having at least a decency of humility to know like these are fields that are not your fields, but the truth of the scriptures support these things. So how do you communicate those in a way to where people are saying, okay, he didn't just say because the Bible said so. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like hide behind, quote unquote, how people think, oh, if the Bible says this, then this. It's like, yeah, it's the scriptures say that, but like let's tease that out, you know.
Yep.
Like let's put in the work. Let's show you the truth and the reality of this. And so I really appreciated being able to go to those spaces and to really deal with them, because at the end of the day, people are looking for they're looking for some certain things to be acknowledged and some of those problems to be addressed, and that's part of our great job and responsibility and role that we get to do.
Yeah, that's great. And as you were preparing for the message, what gave you trouble? Was there anything that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Fam, I just think the complexity of this question and the honesty of it is, you know, it just is the weight to it. Like, you're a finite being trying to describe the infinite. And you're trying to explain to people who don't believe in finiteness, tell them that there's an infinite. I think that was very, like, and how do you do that in a talk? Like
in 30 minutes.
In 30 minutes, which I'm sorry, I did go over on a couple of them. I apologize to you first and foremost, and to Big Phil, or I'm sorry, P Drizzle.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, great name. So if you were having issues, it was my bad. I'm sorry.
Really, you should apologize to every kids ministry worker. That's who you should.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's who you should.
God bless you. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Mhm.
I think that it was hard to be able to try to pick and choose and pick and do it in like such a short amount of time.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's books and books and books on this type of stuff. One of the ways that I did prepare was being able to watch debates
Yeah.
of apologists and people who had questions. So like whether it was campus, like campus conversations. There's a great book by a guy named, I think his last name is Turrent, Frank Turrent. He has a book called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, which is great. And he goes into a lot of different arguments. And so listen to people like John Lennox, the mathematician, and just really was like, okay, from all these different people and the questions that people are asking and the things that I'm encountering, especially and then on college campuses and those different things, what are some of the most common ones? What are some of the most difficult ones to address? And I found one of the harder things to address was like the aspect of creation. Like that creation is like when natural disasters happen. Like how do you explain that? That one was harder for me.
We've heard it said in church world before that creation groans or is groaning, and you said that as well. I've always not really known what that meant, if I'm gonna be honest. So can you give some more space and time to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it talked about creation groaning, it's like, you know, to talk about groans or, you know, another term used, especially when it talks about, you know, Jesus returning, is that it's like pains, like birth pains. You know, like the earth is shaking and the earth is like showing like, oh, it's about to happen, like something's about to come forth. And I think that groaning it's showing that it's broken. And I think the craziest thing is through the fall, whenever a baby, as a baby is born, as cute as it is, young, new baby smell, it's starting to die. Like it is starting to die, and it's going through its life to reach that ultimate point to where by old age or something that they will pass from this life. And you think about that, and you think about Genesis chapter 3:7, when Adam and Eve sinned, and the first thing that they tried to do was cover themselves. And they sewed for themselves fig leaves. Well, when you take, the world's fallen already, and then when you take, you know, leaves from a plant, it's already dying. It's still green, but in a day or two, it's going to be dead. So we see this decay start to happen.
Yeah.
And the reality that that even creation is like, set me free, set me free, set me free. It's groaning, it's crying out, saying like, it's broken. It's not supposed to be this way. And I know I quoted a lot C.S. Lewis in my sermon, which I was like, hey man, I wish he could have just preached it. But he ain't here.
Make a chat bot.
Make a chat bot.
Oh.
Hey, I'm gonna need y'all. I know this is the place and space. Let's
We've got
get
people. We've got people.
If Joe's listening, he's probably already on it.
Bro,
Lewis.bot.
dude, for real. Like, we need to talk about that. But Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe is like, it is like my favorite. And growing up as a kid, I used to watch the PBS ones, and they were terrible, like in the production, but it was just amazing. And so getting to see visually the pieces of C.S. Lewis that he writes in the accounts of Narnia, one of the quotes in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe talked about the evil white witch and queen, that it's always winter, but never Christmas in Narnia. And the ice had been all over creation, to that Christmas couldn't even come. Like, they had the character in there like Santa Claus, right? It was always winter, but there could never be Christmas. And so it's like we live in this beautiful creation. Winter's not bad, but it's never fully been made right since the fall. And what would that look like, where it can be spring again, as C.S. Lewis says? So I think that creation piece, groaning out, was like I think a big eye opener for me. It's like, oh man, yeah, everything's broken and it's not the way it's supposed to be.
I think it was a really good thing to bring up, because that's probably one of the most common things that I hear of why people don't believe in God, or they lose their faith in God. It's just this natural disaster after natural disaster. And it's like, no, God's not causing these things to happen. We live in a broken world, and all the stuff that you said. It was really good.
Well, and I also think it lends itself to helping people understand, like, one of the things that is kind of, it's kind of our default go-to as humans. If we think, if we want to solve a problem, we go to such drastic extremes. And what I mean by that is, for some people, like, we'll think that if we solve this thing, it will completely fix the world, right? Or fix my relationships, right? If I could just have a husband or spouse, then my world will be complete. And we always, go to these places. If I can get that one education, if I can get that job, everything will be good. I'll be straight, like, Lord, and my world will be perfect. And we do that too even when it comes to, I do think we need to, as followers of Jesus and divine gardeners of his creation in Shalom, is to, make sure that we're helping the environment, and we're doing things to make sure that we're helping fix the brokenness in creation. But it also just says to itself, you can't recycle enough to fix the earth. You can't drive enough electric cars to fix the earth. Like, you can't. You can do a good job and start to till the ground and get it ready for Jesus to return. And again, it takes this weight, and it takes this idea that we are the saviors of the world versus that Jesus is the savior of the world. And again, it's not to say that we don't engage those things and recycle and build electric cars and do other cool things that haven't even been invented yet. I just heard that they're making salmon that's not salmon. I've never heard of that before until I heard of it. It's like 3D. They grow it. And there's stuff that's 3D printed. I don't know, fam. It's just, I've seen stuff. And I just know we always create stuff, right? So that's good. We should do it. We need to do it. People need those advances in medicine. People need those advances in technology. But we have to remember that those things won't save us. Jesus will save us. And because Jesus will save us, he's called us to make those things. And I think that's what makes it beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a inherent nature in which there is a lawgiver. Like, whether you consider yourself a Christian or you're the furthest thing from faith, there is a lawgiver. It's you. It's a celebrity you really care about. It's a worldview you ascribe to, or it's God. And so this, Jevon, you talked about it this weekend, but this criticism that we levy against God, how could you do this thing? And therefore, I'm not going to believe in you, or I'm not going to trust you. What we're doing is we're saying, like, we're doing two things simultaneously. We're saying, I don't want to believe in God, and I'm going to criticize it. Well, you don't get to have both. And I think there is this inherent law inside of yourself that when you go, well, why did that natural disaster happen? Well, what are you saying? You're saying, I don't want that evil to exist. And I think that's actually hardwired in us. God's like, good, I don't want that evil to exist either. I've got really good reasons why I'm letting it perpetuate, because I want more people to be in eternal relationship with me, and I'm willing for the kind of era of grace, as it's referred to sometimes, to perpetuate with pain so that more people might come to know me. But, Jevon talked about it this weekend. If we become the standard and we go, well, I don't want that bad thing to happen, I don't want that bad thing to happen, I don't want that bad thing to happen, what we're ultimately saying is, God, we want a justice that sort of hits this level. And usually the level that we're ascribing is our own level. Like we're saying, this is kind of my bar. And because we wouldn't put it above ourselves, because then we get deleted, right? So we're going like, this is the level of, if it's this good or if this bad or worse, God, take care of it. If it's this good or better, leave it alone. And God's like, no, that's not the way it works. Like, my standard is mortal perfection. And so here are your options. I can extend grace in a broken world and invite you to know me forever. Or I can restore all things as they should be right now. And in so doing, you cease to exist. And so when you put it that way, right, you go, well, I guess I understand why natural disasters happen. Now, that doesn't mean it's emotionally satisfying. It doesn't mean that it's not awful for those people that are impacted by it. That's not it at all. But to understand philosophically, like, okay, this is not an accident. God's not going, uh-oh, I never saw this coming. He is choosing to use the pain of our moment, whether that's something big like that or something small like a personal disappointment or a layoff or somebody in your life betrayed you. All of those things, I think, are reminders that there's something bigger than ourselves in the world. Things are not the way they're supposed to be. And the promise of Jesus is he wants to begin to put that right in you, that you might be able to put the world right around you in anticipation of God making the world right forever.
Amen. That's the gospel. That's the gospel. It's good news. It's good news. And I think a lot of people have not heard good news. They've just seen destruction. And how does God show us what the good news is, in himself. So it's beautiful.
Oh. John, I got one more question for you, and then I'll open it up. I'm sure Jess and Phil probably have some questions they've been dying to ask. Sorry for monopolizing this conversation.
No, please.
Towards the end of your message, almost at the end, you had a line that said, you may not get the answer to the why. This is talking about these questions, but you will get the love of the who. Is that a Jevon?
I said that.
You said that.
Yes, Lord.
You said that? That's a Jevon quote?
I can see a mug coming right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'll print that for you. I'll send it your way.
Yeah. Because I think the big part about discrediting God is his character. And I think it's crazy. Like, even when we just think about in today's day, if you have a PR disaster or if someone does something like what companies do that they are not, when they act out of character or they're immoral, is they justify anything of this person to make it not seem as bad. And that's being dishonest, right? And then there are people who will tell lies about them or say whatever, and you're trying to do something what even you can do or find in movies or in the field of law. You can discredit. You either have to discredit or show that someone has credit, right? And I think what C.S. Lewis does when he taps into the screw tape letters is very good, where he says, like, don't try to convince them of these things. You have to try to make him seem like he's not good. You have to discredit his character. You have to make him look bad in order for him to for you to win. And I think that we oftentimes look at the reality of the situation and the pain of the situation rather than the person who's in charge over all things. And I'm reminded that when obviously the soldiers, when they put the crown of thorns on Jesus's head and they wrapped him in purple, that when they did that, they were making him, which is part of the whole gospel of the kingdom, and him as king and God of the whole universe, is that he becomes king over pain. Not king who authors pain to harm and destroy people, but that he can use pain for your good. Not that he authors it, but that he can use it because he's the king over it. It must submit to him. And when you can say, a God who came and suffered in my place for my sin, and who goes through great lengths to fix all things, that all things must submit to him, I can trust that God in the midst of my brokenness. To know that God wore a crown of thorns that fallen creation. He gets killed by his own creation and then wears fallen creation as a crown. To me, that's like he's king. So when you're talking about, you may never get the answer of the why, you know the person of love. Yeah. And that to me is powerful, because like Job asked all those questions and he never got the answer. He never got the answer. And I think sometimes we don't get the answer, but we do get the person. And if we can see the ethos and the ethics of the kingdom, which are the attributes of God, then we can see the answer somewhat revealed in Jesus.
Wow. That's awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet, man.
Yeah. Phil, what should we have asked if we didn't ask yet?
Yeah, man, I would love to know. Obviously, we get a chance to, kind of chop it up a little bit every week together. But, as you're heading back to Seattle today and back to life, and maybe folks at Menlo are like, man, I really care about that guy, and it was great to hear from him. How can they be thinking about and praying for you kind of in this season for your family?
Yeah. Yeah, be praying for us. I got some great work to do as in the NGO nonprofit space that I'm in, and helping churches mobilize into their local neighborhoods and communities to really share the gospel and to show people how we are to be Jesus' hands and feet and be filled and dwelled with the Holy Spirit. So we've got some great work ahead of me in that. My daughters are just growing, and it's parenting is always one of those ones that you're like, I need some Jesus. So parenting, just on how to navigate the spaces where your kids are in some schools that may have some beliefs that are different from yours.
Yeah.
I'll just put it that way. So just praying and cover over my family, and then just for us to continue to have fun together and enjoy life. So this has been one of the best trips that I've ever been on.
Wow.
I've had so much fun. The Bay Area is great. This area is great. I've just been able to, in the short amount of time I've been here, like have so many cool conversations, dinners, charcuterie board times,
Yeah.
Some ribs.
Ooh, like it's been such a blessing, and the Lord's doing something special here, and so I want to see Him continue to bless my family and all the things that we do. So pray that the Lord would allow us to continue to get rest and enjoy those things.
And I think, if you haven't put it together, Jevon is a bivocational pastor, which Jevon's been a bivocational pastor for a long time. And I think there's just something about that I respect so deeply, right? Because, margin for your family. Heather's also great at what she does and works outside the home. And then you have two little girls that you both love profoundly, right? And so being present for them, and then church world, and your pastor was on sabbatical, and so you're covering some extra stuff, and then on top of that your day job, and trying to juggle all that. I think it's not some esoteric hey, just that we'd have a good life together. It's like, oh man, this is a battle. This is a battle all the time. There is more work to do than there are hours to do the work. Yeah. And so, man, I just appreciate you letting us pray for you.
Thanks for that context, because by now it's like autopilot.
Yeah.
And Jevon's been in high tech. He's been at places like Amazon. He's obviously been in NGO world for a long time, but I've always just deeply respected how, ministry, it wasn't the side hustle for you. I feel like in some ways for you, the day job's kind of like your side hustle.
For real.
Right? And
Yeah.
so that's a huge gift. And I think way more the future of the church, way more the future of the church. And so to have some folks trying to live that out well for decades is a big deal, man.
Yeah, dude. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Got you.
John, thanks so much. Thanks for coming on. Jess, is there anything we didn't know about anything coming up for Menlo stuff?
Yeah, we announced our Menlo 150 celebration this weekend. We got a big old birthday party Sunday, November 5th. We're going to be at Woodside High School.
Okay.
Just outside off of 280, and Woodside is the exit. So not too far from Menlo Park. But we're going to have one service All 4 campuses come together, 10:30 a.m.
So that's one service at every campus.
One service at Woodside.
Yep.
No other. If you go to one of our
Right.
campuses on November 5th, nobody will be there, and it will be very sad for you.
Aw.
So come join us. We're gonna have an awesome service, and then we're gonna have a big party afterwards. So there's gonna be some fun activities to do. Lots of kids things. You can go to menlo.church/menlo150. You can register. You can pre-order lunch. You can volunteer and help us because we need it. It's just gonna be a really fun day. It's gonna be exhausting for staff, but it's gonna be really fun.
It will be a great
Anything to add to that?
I think even if you're somebody that maybe, I think that this probably makes more sense in people's heads if they've been longtime Menlo folks. And if you're somebody that's newer and you're like, do I really qualify? Is this I just think this is one of those moments that years from now we'll look back on this event and go, man, that was just so special to be able to catalyze and celebrate as a community something really significant. And so if you're thinking you don't qualify or that's a week off or should I would just give you one more nudge to say make it happen. Make being there a priority, and there's gonna be something fun for kids and great chance to hang out and a service that I think hopefully will honor 150 years of God's faithfulness to this community.
Yeah.
And so if you put it in that framework, whether you've been here for a day or a decade, candidly, like in the span of 150 years, we're all kind of new to Menlo.
Yeah,
And so,
true, honestly.
I think, we are equally qualified to be there.
Yeah. We've found some like old film reels, VHS tapes, cassette tapes, photo slides, all this stuff that's getting processed right now, so we can make a really cool
Were the ones
history
before
video.
that like stone tablets?
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
From
We've got
Moses.
some etchings,
Exactly.
tablets.
Yeah.
We had to paint over them. 'Cause
Was it
they-
you? Somebody gave me the 80th anniversary sermon.
Maybe, yeah.
So I have it's my
So you're
office.
just going to scratch out the 80 and write
Yeah,
150
yeah.
and now it's already written.
yeah.
No one's
Yeah.
ever heard that one.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's
We
right.
found this book that has the list of every pastor that's been a pastor since it started. So
Wow.
it's pretty cool. Lots of cool
crazy.
stuff. So
Wow.
come check it out.
Interesting.
Yep.
And if you have more questions about
Yep.
this Explore God stuff, we've got groups on every campus going on right now. If you've missed the first few, don't worry about it. Come to any week you can go. Menlo.church/Explore God to get all those details at the campus nearest you. It's just awesome, open conversation for you to feel comfortable in a space to ask any question you might have.
Great. And Jevon, thanks so much for being with
Yeah.
us.
Absolutely. Thanks for
Super
having
So
me.
fun.
If you want to send over some encouragement for him or his family, you can text us at 650-600-0402. I'll pass those along, as well as if you have any questions about this series or Menlo 150, just text us. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And Jevon, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, you bet,
Yay.
man. Pleasure.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
I was like, are we saying bye?
Yeah.